What's going on, everybody? Doc here, Average Gamer Guys, back again at Casual's Guide to Tarkov, and it looks like next wipe might not necessarily be that. I'm going to do something a little different today. We're going to talk about a little bit of the news, the upcoming wipe 1.0, and at the end, or throughout, give a few thoughts and comments here. So prepare for a little bit of a shorter video. Let me know your thoughts and comments on what's to come here, but let's run through the information really quick. It looks like over the last week or so, we've had a series of next wipe infographics coming out. I am on the official Escape from Tarkov account, so all of this stuff is coming from there. We have all three now. We have a little bit of feedback from Nikita and a couple of other comments and questions that got answered to hopefully help remedy some of the concern. Getting a hardcore wipe coming up. I would expect, this is just a rough guess, they're going to do it in July. The updated roadmap said that. I would expect we probably got a couple weeks, maybe 2 weeks as of the recording or posting of this video. That's purely a guess, though. What typically happens, for those that might not be as familiar with wipes, is typically we'll get a series of events. We usually get about 10 days to 2 weeks worth of events. Sometimes they start to jack up loot. Sometimes they start to put bosses everywhere. Sometimes they put bosses on every map. In the past, they've turned all raiders or all enemies into raiders. Things then get really, really cheap on the trader screen, and everything gets unlocked for everybody. And that usually lasts for, I don't know, 2 days or so, and then typically the wipe kicks off from that point. So if you start to see those types of events start to roll up, it's sometimes a slow roll. In the past, it's also been very fast. We've had, I think, maybe it was like 5 days of events before a wipe before, but as of recently, they've been spanning those out a little bit better. So it's coming sometime here this month. So we got a little bit more time to progress. If you're getting close to Kappa or any other achievements that you wanted to get done, now's your chance to do that. Other than that, maybe it's a chance to go and use some gear, have some fun, get some PvP, do some stuff, maybe kill some bosses, and run some challenges if you're looking to do that. Also, not a bad time if you're trying to go and get some achievements completed. Having like all bosses spawn on all locations or one location can really help for snowball challenges and a few of the other things that we have that are persistent. So do keep that in mind. But here's what we got. Hardcore wipe is next wipe. This is going to be a pretty short wipe cycle. 2026 should be the 1.0 release of the game. That's what they've said. So you've got essentially from sometime in July till the end of the year before that happens. This may or may not be something that lots of players want to do. So keep that in mind. I will say this. If you have not done a hardcore challenge in Escape from Tarkov, granted, if you're like really, really new and you play very casually, this might not be for you. But if you are and have some time and have a couple wipes under your belt, this can be a really fun extra challenge. Now, we'll see what happens here with specifically these details. But for those that are familiar, I'm actually pretty excited. I've run a ton of hardcore seasons on our channel here with a separate account that we have, and I enjoy it. It's a different type of challenge. You prioritize things differently. Hideout progression, at least for me, became very, very important, and that's something that I focused on, and it just adds an extra like flavor and intensity to the game, which isn't a bad thing. So we'll see how this progresses. But I'm going to just say I'm personally excited for it. I recognize it's not going to be for everyone. If it's not for you, I'd tell you to give it a try. I'd tell you give it a little bit of a try because you might find some things about it. If you've been kind of yearning a little bit more for the older school Tarkov feeling, this can help to bring some of that back, some of the intensity, some of the heart-pounding action. You find that item that you need or whatever, or that key or whatever the case may be, and you got to try to survive the raid. Can be pretty fun. So I'll make that and keep that in mind as I give some comments. That's where I'm kind of thinking and my focus is and my initial thought process, but obviously I have some concerns here as well. Let's get into it. Hardcore wipe number 1, flea market disabled. We've seen this before. This isn't the biggest deal. You can survive without the flea market. However, the only thing that I've ever found to be a massive pain is there are a lot of quests that require very, very specific armor and gear. And I genuinely don't believe that the stash space we have supports hoarding that gear. Let's take all of the blueberry armor that you need, for instance. Flea market gives you accessibility to that, especially if you're not there at a trader level or you've run out of the supply that you can buy and you're just trying to grind through those quests. You can't do that when the flea market is disabled. Now, changes to traders and stuff is something we'll talk about here a little bit later, but that is the one area of concern. If you can't buy the gun that you want because it's, you know, your favorite or super meta or whatever, like, you just have to deal with that. And honestly, that's one of the things that I found that I enjoy the most about hardcore is the fact that you have to get used to using things that you didn't typically use before. Taking down a geared PMC with a stock SKS is a pretty fun feeling, right? Being able to level your stuff up is a really fun feeling, and the flea market and not having access to it, I think, will really help with that feeling. But there are also some other side balancing changes that I doubt we will see. No offense to Escape from Tarkov and Nikita and all the folks, but like, they're not going to rebalance that stuff for this wipe. Maybe they will. Maybe we get really surprised. I highly doubt that, though. And so some of those things are going to become sticking points when you don't have the opportunity to pick those up from the flea market. Even simple things like toolkits. You need a whole bunch of toolkits in order to get a lot of even early game progression going, not only for the hideout, but for a bunch of quests. Those can become sticking points, and that can be a little frustrating. So I think we'll be fine with that one, but just a couple of comments that I want to note on. Increase item requirements for hideout zones. I don't know why they would do this, only with the exception to only slow down hideout progress. In my experience with hardcore, hideout progression ends up being very, very important. As I mentioned before, it's really personally how I judge how well I am doing in the hardcore series is how much I've been able to upgrade. And the reason for that is because once you start upgrading your hideout, especially as once you start getting things to level 2, you get a lot of access to things and you just get more options, right? You don't have to necessarily go in to find an item. You can now craft that item, gas analyzers, just a whole bunch of different stuff that can be really, really helpful to do that. And increasing item requirements for hideout zones scares me a little bit, just because it's already a hardcore wipe. I don't know that you need to do it. There's a lot of grind already incorporated with the hideout. Maybe they'll mix up some of the hideout crafts. That's the only thing I can hope for, and add a few items instead of just like 2xing all of the requirements. But obviously, time will tell. Hideout zones don't require found and raid items. That's good. You can still store stuff in your container. Those loose loot type valuables will become much more valuable, which is really nice. That's the part I enjoyed about hardcore. So it's kind of cool. Again, you can find some of the stuff that you need. You throw it in there. That's cool. Limited hideout ammo crafts. That's fine with me. Again, if you are having a harder time upgrading your hideout, if it's taking more stuff, like, this isn't going to matter that much. You need level 3 for a lot of these. Maybe some of the earlier ammo crafts they could move just so you have some accessibility, but we will have to see on that. But this doesn't really bother me at all. Reduce spawn chance of rare loot. Now, there was a clarification from Nikita that said that this was related to gun parts very specifically. I'm a little hesitant with this, which I think a lot of the community is. I'm worried that they are going to nerf rare loot, which is not good. You need the ability to find rare loot, because in many instances, let's say you go to woods and you find yourself a Ledex on the med table. You're probably not going to hold on to that for another 40 levels. Some people will. I might. You get in a sticky spot and you need to sell that to a trader for a couple 100,000 rubles. You're going to do that, right? So my hope is that this doesn't actually impact like rare loot specifically. My hope is actually rare loot gets better. We've seen recently that they buffed a whole bunch of the marked rooms. That was a lot of fun. I actually had a key and jumped into some PvP and picked up all of the key cards on my PvE account just to hang on to them. So I'm very excited for that. That was a ton of fun. That's how I think those rooms should be. Maybe not as crazy as it was, but somewhere in between what we had versus what we have now that they're testing. And so I'm hoping that they get the opportunity to actually increase rare loot in some of those locations, because I think that is pretty fun. This overall, not too bad. Some things that we just need to know the details of. That's the part throughout this whole series of everything I've been seeing on Twitter and Reddit and a whole bunch of stuff is like, they put these infographics out, they're great. It's not enough detail for us to understand. And part of that's just how they do this. Like, that's just if you're new, that's just how they communicate, right? They want to leave some things unknown because Nikita very much likes people to explore the game. They don't want things to be data mined. They don't want things to be given away. But I think a few additional cursory details would have helped to stem, because there's a lot of anxiety. That's the word I'm going to use for it. There's a lot of anxiety around this hardcore wipe. I think it's just going to be a neat test. Let them test some things out. My hope, too, is that they're testing this so that maybe they allow us at 1.0 to have a hardcore character. A hardcore season. I would love that. And then if some of these things were there, you get to test them, they adjust them, and then we apply them, and you have, 2 characters or whatever when 1.0 comes out. I'd like that. I think that'd be really, really cool. And then the hardcore season could be persistent, right? Maybe that one doesn't wipe because of all of these restrictions and adjustments. I'm purely speculating, but they've talked about potentially doing that in the past. You don't want to split your player base, but this is pretty interesting. And so my hope is that they're testing this out, see how it goes. And I think we can make it through with these. Let's go to the second one here. Restricted location accessibility is probably the biggest thing that most people are concerned about. It says most of the locations will only be accessible through transitions from appropriate locations. Now, the problem with that ends up being is, and I haven't used the transition system a ton, getting more familiar with it as we've gone through this wipe, is the fact that there are obviously limited avenues, but lots of maps have multiple transitions to different maps. So how many maps are open to start? My feeling is it's going to be pretty good. My feeling is you're going to have like Interchange Customs, Factory, maybe even Shoreline open, and then you can essentially get to every other location from one transition, which is what they've essentially kind of said in so many words, with the exception of like Labs and Labyrinth, I think, which then doesn't make sense because then Shoreline's not open. So I don't really know, but that's my thoughts. They obviously are going to limit things like Streets. My guess is that, but see, that doesn't make sense because Streets has so many opportunities to go to other maps, but I don't think they can force or funnel the player base to Streets because lots of people don't play Streets. I don't play Streets that often. I have a pretty dang good computer. I just don't play Streets that often, but it would be the best place to allow a lot of transitions. So I don't know. So I think understanding this, they did also say that like all of these, I should say this up front, all of these different things are going to like come in waves. They're going to be applied as the wipe progresses to see how things go. Kind of like a reverse wipe almost, I guess. I don't know. That's kind of interesting. So, well, it'll be interesting to see exactly how things start versus how things are then applied later and what happens with that. So keep all that in mind. We don't really know the progression of those things as well, but it would make sense that the first things they showed would be the first things that start, and then they add this, which then would be a little weird because if you play it early, you're going to get some advantage. I don't know. Some of it just, again, details. Details, guys. Details would be really helpful. But let's keep going. Again, this one has a lot of people spooked, and rightfully so, just because there's a lot of loading times. All of the arguments I've seen for this make a lot of sense. There's a lot of loading times. You got to load into the match, then you got to go maybe get something, then run from that place to the transition. There are only so many you transition from the map, and there's only so many spawns for those transitions on the other map. So how are you spawning in? It just, yeah. I'm hoping they've thought about all this. You would hope. We shall see. Yeah, we shall see. Secure container restrictions. Can't store ammo, currency, and certain medicine. I'm okay with that, with the exception of medicine. Meds end up becoming, in a hardcore wipe, very, very important, especially as we get to the next one, which is limited trader interaction, reduced range of available medicine, weapons, and ammo and armor. So all of the things that they're reducing, they're also not letting you store, which forces you to survive. That's the point of a hardcore wipe. Typically with ammo, if you do a true hardcore, at least at a pretty standard rule set, you can't buy anything from the traders. So that essentially becomes, I don't want to say useless. So having limited restrictions to those aren't going to be a big deal for anybody that's actually done this rule set before. For anybody that hasn't, that relies on buying that stuff, this is going to be a major change. I don't know that I like not being able to store medicine in your secure container. The biggest issue that comes up from that, it's not in raid, it's not any of this stuff. You can go find those things, right? You can prioritize loot spots. You can head to certain maps, like Woods ends up being a gold mine for that, and you can stock up some meds. The problem with it ends up being is if you die and you don't have the currency to heal, then trying to get into a raid and heal will just kill it for some people. If you have heavy bleeds coming out of a raid, you're not going to want to sit there and let your character heal for 45 minutes after the raid is over if you can't heal that. And you don't want to spawn into the next raid with multiple heavy bleeds and fractures because you're not going to make it anywhere. It becomes a very, very interesting balance system, and that's one of the rules that's changed for hardcore over the seasons that I've done it, is I allow myself to purchase the heals from therapists because it's just a miserable experience if you're damaged after a raid is over. It's just terrible. It's absolutely terrible. And if you don't have the means to fix it before you go into the next raid, if all of like heavy bleeds and fractures and all that stuff, all of those ailments went away and you just had lower health, I'd be fine with it. But the fact that you keep that stuff and it's persistent is, it could be bad. And not being able to keep your medicine in your container to keep it safe, to be able to remedy that if you get low on funds, is pretty brutal. So just my thoughts, but that's where we're at with this one. Reduce item selling price and increase purchase price. Okay, that one's fine. No big deal. They basically limited trader interaction, and this is trying to tell you basically like you don't really have access to the traders. And that's really what a hardcore wipe is. Like, they have taken a pretty standard hardcore rule set. They're not completely gutting it to that because lots of people I don't think would play at that rule set. Like, if they just said no flea market, no traders, okay, like you could just sell to them, that people would lose their freaking minds. But this is their way of doing that, so whatever. It is what it is. That's where I'm at on those. And then lastly, they said we're carefully monitoring feedback and provide more details of the upcoming wipe. All restrictions indicated in the infographics will be wave-like. As players progress, we have planned sets of changes that will affect the gameplay, including the gradual opening of locations on the location selection screen. So what that makes me feel like is actually reverse of what I said before, which is at first it's going to be very limited, and then locations are going to open as the wipe progresses. That actually feels better. You won't be as restricted if you jump into the wipe late. Maybe you're a little hesitant, go play something else, then want to get your Tarkov fix. That might not be so bad. And I like some things shifting, but again, much of this, at least for the first two screens, feel like they have to apply those things pretty quickly at the beginning, or else it's just going to provide like a weird balance to folks that are playing later on. But if they ease it up as it goes, maybe that brings more people into the game. Obviously, they want to have a successful 1.0 wipe. It kind of sucks that this is their chance of trying this before that. But again, I'm really hopeful that it means that maybe we're going to get a second character, and they're going to be able to do this, and it's going to be persistent. And that would be pretty cool, actually. That would add to an interesting level of difficulty, I think. So let's get to the last one here. 100% boss spawn chance on all locations. I love this, actually, for the most part. If you know how to avoid them and you don't have to go and, do anything with that, this is your chance to go get some cool loot using a really crappy gun. I have had many instances in my hardcore seasons of taking like a Mosin into customs, killing Rashala and all the guards, and just looting my mind up, right? And then walking out with a couple of rigs and some good guns and some good ammo and some solid attachments. That could really carry you. So this is pretty fun. I'm actually excited for that. I think that's neat. I think this little skull thing that they were doing is a really good idea. So you know what you got going on, which is pretty sweet. Reduced experience for killing enemies and for dying. I'm fine with that. Like, they want to slow down the progression in terms of how fast you level up. That's cool. Increased experience for surviving. These two in combo, I really like. I actually genuinely like that. It's just, again, trying to funnel you towards the idea of, like, you need to survive, right? Hardcore, you need to survive your raid. Even if it's a simple raid where you go in, you grab a task item, kill a couple of scavs, you loot up a little bit, get some food, get some meds, get some ammo, and you survive. That should feel like a huge win. And so getting increased experience for surviving is actually pretty cool. I don't like the reduced experience for killing enemies, but that I guess keeps you from like farming scam. I don't know. That just doesn't make sense. Like in a true hardcore wipe, you really don't want to mess with a ton of stuff that you don't have to. You're not like sitting in the raid for 40 minutes just killing all the scavs as they spawn. You're trying to get in, get what you need, get out, find the valuables, and survive. And so I think they could eliminate that part. I think it was just reduced experience for dying, increased experience for surviving would be good, but we'll see how these pair up. Last one is increased AI difficulty. This one also scares me because here's the problem. The AI sucks. I think we could all agree that the AI is not great in the game. Some of the changes they've made recently have made it better. Them not being able to see infinitely through bushes and walls and everything has been nice, but the AI is not good. So increasing AI difficulty just means they're better shots. That's scary when you have limited access to armor, limited access to attachments, limited access to ammo, limited access to meds. Now you're getting shot more, they're more accurate, you don't have the armor to protect you, and they all act like raiders, and that's going to be really, really bad. So hopefully this is like the very end of whatever they apply. That one just makes me nervous because I don't think the AI needs to be any worse, and it's already going to be punishing for a lot of people. If you're somebody who, again, has played the game even for a little while, as you progress, you know that early wipe is fun because you have limited access to all that stuff and everybody's got crap ammo. Then you get to a point where you can start sustaining on the flea market and with traders decent ammo, decent weapons with good attachments. When players realize that they're not going to be able to do that with regularity now because of what they can buy and how the progression works, that is going to be a sticking point for a lot of players. A lot of players that feel like they're really good at the game or pretty good at the game are going to die a lot more often to some random group of scavs that are shooting at them because they're using just a bunch of iron sights and a whole bunch of things. So I can say that from experience because that was me. Hardcore wipes very early on and hardcore seasons that we did, and it takes a lot of getting used to. So I don't know that we needed to increase the AI difficulty, but there we are as well. So that's what we got. Those are the 3 screen grabs we got. I just want to share a couple of thoughts here from the man himself. Nikita, we had 3 pictures explaining this, blah, blah, blah. Various balance changes will be made to trading, availability of weapons, equipment, loot behavior, quests. So they highlight quests, experience, skill leveling, and other attributes and parameters in order to create a unique experience of playing in harsh conditions. Several stages of progression are planned within which balance changes will be made. Follow the news, find out more details. We're also closely monitoring feedback, blah, 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 blah. Dear friends, let's go hardcore. Cool. I hope, the problem is the game has so much stuff. It just feels rough to try to balance all of these elements at once unless they've been planning this for literally freaking months. Now, my hope is that they have. I genuinely want to believe that they have. They've been doing that. With that being said, if they have not, it's going to potentially get a little rough because when you start to narrow the scope of the game in certain aspects, if other things aren't changed to allow for that narrowing, especially quests, like quest progression is also huge in a hardcore wipe just because it's extra stuff. It's extra money. A lot of times it's gear. I would love to see all the rewards change for like every single level 1 through 15 task. And I say that because if they just gave you a gun with a couple of mags and some ammo, or like a big meds drop, or even just a couple of good hideout items that you could actually use to progress your hideout, that would be huge. Imagine going and finding your gas analyzers, turning it in, and getting like 3 runs worth of weapons, for instance, and ammo. That'd be great. I don't think that's where the balance is going to be, and that's what would help to offset some of the feelings of this being super hardcore. Plus, you have the cheater situation on top of all this, blah, blah, blah. If flea market is banned, though, carries are still going to be a thing, and if they do any changes to like dropping items, I don't know. That's still going to be a big issue, but flea market being banned should hopefully help a little bit with that. But again, it's going to be, we're going to see, right? Maybe this will help them to detect more cheaters, but obviously I don't even want to get into that because then I'll get the naysayers. They don't do that anyways. Like And, I don't know, whatever, like your thoughts on that or whatever. I want the game to be fun. I want this to be accessible. It has the chance of being really cool, in my opinion, because I've done this before and I enjoy this extra challenge. But I also, again, don't play this game solely, right? I mix this up with other channels and things that we're doing. So I play this a couple hours a week. Like I hope most of you do that are watching this series, and this may certainly hurt that. I do very much recognize player base for this, if this isn't well done, is going to woo. Now, the people that want a challenge are going to enjoy it, right? They're going to talk highly of it. People that have done hardcore challenges before are going to enjoy it because it's going to feel like they don't have to self-impose a lot of restrictions to themselves, which is cool. That being said, a lot of the player base, I can understand having an issue with this. And again, if some of these other things, some of this part right here isn't appropriately adjusted, right, it's going to be rough. If this is, and they really do listen to feedback and make adjustments to make it have some level of accessibility, it should be actually pretty cool and is a good way to get prepped up. And honestly, my experience from doing hardcore to then playing regular, it helps you. It helps you in the game. It sounds weird to say that, but it genuinely, in my experience, has helped me play the game because it's helped me to really prioritize what I need to get done. It helps me understand the value of some of the things, especially, again, like hideout upgrades and that kind of stuff. And I've enjoyed that. That has helped me in my regular gameplay as well. And just be more comfortable, again, with different weapons and different gear and not always running the most meta stuff and still being able to find and have some success, which is pretty cool. Now, one of the last things I just want to comment on, and I'm going to give Very Bad Scav all the credit for finding this or getting this reply, is there's a big issue with ref, because you can go and play arena and get a whole bunch of stuff and transfer a whole bunch of money and cases and all that crap over to the wipe, over to your main character, as well as scav play. Nope, there are going to be nerfs to ref and scav play. Honestly, ref for this wipe, my opinion, close him. Close him. Just close him. Give him a few more quests so that everybody can do it. Open it up for PvE. All those players would love to have access to that. Just do it already, right? So that you don't have to have arena. And scavs just, in regular hardcore, you can't scav, right? In the normal rule set, you can't scav. I understand that they can't turn that off because some players are so reliant, or really maybe enjoy that part of the experience. There are other players that are very reliant on that. If you could scav in and it just sent you at a random map at a random time, fine. That would be the nerf that I need, right? Because other than that, how do you nerf a scav, right? Don't give them the increased loot, like fence rep and all that stuff. Basically, just set that to 0 for everybody so that you're, spawning in with a shitty AK or shitty SKS or whatever, and a stack of ammo and, a rig. And then you really have to loot around and grab your 5 things and get out. If you stumble on a player, obviously great. If you kill a player, obviously great. If they did that and you couldn't pick the map, fine, right? Or limit those. The problem is they can't limit it to, like, let's say Streets is locked initially. Streets has a ton of great loot. You just loot everywhere. If you just randomly dropped into Streets on your scav and you're like one of the only ones there, and the player base isn't transitioning through there because it's hardcore and they don't have early access to it, it's going to make this like really weird interaction of like not enough players to then kill the scavs to then make this better. It's just, they need to, I hope they have some good thoughts about these things. My ref comment is just either lock him or unlock him and add additional quests that don't require arena. And obviously you need to change out like what he offers, because being able to trade for like a pretty near meta M4 at level 2, which I don't know if you can do at this point. I think I have level 3. It would obviously not be great, but again, if you're taking that and then you're putting really shitty ammo in, it may not matter. I don't know, but I'm happy that this was addressed. And that's my thoughts. I gave my thoughts throughout. Sorry for chatting at you for 30 minutes here for this episode, but let me know what you think. I, again, am excited because I like this type of challenge, but I very much understand if it's not properly balanced, and if you haven't done this before, and you feel like you struggle with this game already, this is not going to help you. And so I do expect the player base to be a lot lower. My recommendation would be get some more info, let the wipe happen. Maybe don't play it initially. Let the wait happen. Give it a week or two. See some feedback. Try jumping in. Give it a chance. Give it a chance, because I think some players will really realize a lot of value from playing at a wipe like this. How to prioritize certain things. How to find certain things. Like what routes to go with quests and hideout upgrades and that kind of stuff, which is very, very valuable for normal gameplay, right? Because a lot of the things that transition from this are very applicable to just playing at a regular wipe, especially early wipe really helps a lot of players. So that'd be my recommendation. If you're scared or you're nervous or you're apprehensive about this or think it's going to suck, give it a chance. Just give it a chance, and I think you might be surprised, or you might hate it, and guess what? Take a couple months off from the game, maybe go PvE, maybe play some arena, do whatever you're going to do, and come back at 1.0. And I hope this helps 1.0 and maybe gives us some better options as we get to that point. So that's it for this one. We'll be back with regular. I'm going to try to record a decent amount of episodes, but I'm telling you, we're doing another casual. We're doing a casual hardcore wipe. Sounds really weird, doesn't it? We are doing this as soon as this kicks off. I'm very excited about it. So if you want to, join along and share our progression and our journey, we'd love to have you. And hopefully you're continuing to enjoy our content, and we'll keep pumping these things out and enjoying Escape from Tarkov in whatever form and fashion that it comes. And we'll give some feedback, of course, as we go. So thanks for watching. Consider subscribing if you're not, and we'll be back with more, as we always are. Peace.